No one expected the courtroom to feel tense that morning. It was supposed to be another routine HOA enforcement case, clipboard rules, stiff fines, and a board convinced they were untouchable. The judge skimmed the docket with mild boredom, attorneys whispered to their clients, and the HOA president sat confidently in the front row, already certain of victory. Then the defendant walked in. Calm, measured, unassuming. No entourage. No theatrics. Just Morgan Freeman, taking a seat like he'd done this 1,000 times before. The HOA board had filed the lawsuit months earlier, accusing Freeman of repeated violations related to landscaping, exterior lighting, and unauthorized modifications. According to them, his property had disrupted neighborhood uniformity. They fined him daily, sent threatening letters, and eventually escalated it to court. What they didn't expect was resistance. They especially didn't expect the man they'd targeted to actually show up, alone, composed, and clearly unbothered. When the judge called the case, the HOA's attorney stood first, delivering a confident opening. He spoke about equal enforcement and no homeowner being above the rules. The HOA president nodded vigorously, arms crossed, wearing the satisfied expression of someone who believed this case would set an example. The judge listened quietly, pen tapping once against the desk. Then he glanced toward the defense table. "Mr. Freeman," he said evenly, "are you representing yourself today?" Morgan Freeman stood slowly. The room shifted. Not loudly, just enough to be felt. He didn't rush. He didn't smile. He simply acknowledged the judge with a respectful nod. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. And that voice, calm, unmistakable, cut through the courtroom like a switch flipping on. A few people in the gallery leaned forward. One court clerk froze mid-typing. The HOA attorney hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Freeman didn't argue yet. He didn't explain. He didn't defend himself. Instead, he asked a simple question that seemed almost too polite for a courtroom battle. "Before we proceed," he said, "may I ask the court to review the enforcement history of this association?" The judge raised an eyebrow, intrigued. The HOA attorney objected immediately, calling it irrelevant. But the judge paused, then waved him off. "I'll allow it," he said. "Let's see where this goes." That's when the confidence on the HOA president's face began to fade. Because what Morgan Freeman had just done, without raising his voice, without posturing, was open a door they had spent years trying to keep closed. And once that door opened, the courtroom was about to learn that this case wasn't about landscaping at all. It was about power. The judge's request for the HOA's enforcement history changed the temperature in the room instantly. What had started as a confident, almost routine case now felt unstable. The HOA attorney shuffled through his files, buying time, while the association president leaned toward him and whispered urgently. Morgan Freeman remained still, hands folded, eyes forward, patient, like someone who knew the next scene before it played. The judge reviewed the documents in silence. Minutes passed. The only sound was the faint hum of the lights and the slow turning of pages. Then the judge looked up. "Counsel," he said to the HOA attorney, "can you explain why these same violations appear repeatedly, yet only against one homeowner?" The attorney attempted a smooth response, claiming coincidence and proactive enforcement. But his voice lacked the confidence it had just minutes earlier. Morgan Freeman was then invited to speak. He stood again, unhurried. "Your Honor," he began, "I asked for those records because I wanted clarity, not special treatment." He explained that for over 2 years, identical landscaping features existed throughout the neighborhood. Similar lighting, the same trees, even matching stone borders. Yet only one home had been fined. His. And each violation notice escalated faster than the last, sometimes within days, sometimes without warning. The judge leaned back, studying Freeman closely. "Did you request hearings with the HOA?" he asked. Freeman nodded. Multiple times. Each request was either ignored or denied without explanation. He then submitted copies of certified letters, emails, and meeting requests, each stamped, dated, and unanswered. The courtroom murmured softly. Even the court clerk glanced up again, sensing the shift. The HOA attorney tried to regain control, arguing that the association had broad discretion. That's when the judge interrupted him. Discretion does not mean selective enforcement, he said sharply. He turned toward the HOA president. Sir, were you aware these violations existed on other properties? The president hesitated, just long enough. I wasn't personally aware, he said. The judge's eyes narrowed. But you signed the enforcement orders. Morgan Freeman spoke once more, his tone steady, almost gentle. Your Honor, I complied every time. I paid fines. I made changes. But the violations never stopped. He paused, letting the words settle. At some point, it became clear this wasn't about compliance. It was about pressure. The silence that followed was heavy, and unmistakably uncomfortable. The judge closed the file slowly. I'm going to need more than explanations, he said. I'm going to need transparency. He announced a temporary halt to all fines and scheduled a continuation hearing. Then he added the words that drained the last bit of color from the HOA table. I am also considering a broader review of this association's enforcement practices. As the gavel struck, the HOA attorney avoided eye contact. The president stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Morgan Freeman simply nodded to the judge and returned to his seat, calm as ever. The case wasn't over. But the power had shifted. When the case reconvened 2 weeks later, the courtroom felt different. The casual confidence the HOA once carried was gone, replaced by tight expressions and hurried whispers. Boxes of documents sat beside the defense table, bank statements, email chains, enforcement logs, and internal HOA memos the judge had personally ordered disclosed. Morgan Freeman arrived early and waited quietly, hands folded, as if this were just another obligation in a long day. The judge wasted no time. I have reviewed the materials submitted, he said, tapping the stack of papers in front of him. And I have questions. He began with the email records, messages between HOA board members discussing enforcement strategy. One message, dated nearly a year earlier, referred to Freeman's property as a problem example and suggested making him the test case to discourage other homeowners from challenging the board. The courtroom went still. The HOA attorney objected immediately, calling the emails informal discussions. The judge cut him off. They're written records of intent, he said sharply. And intent matters. He then read another email aloud, one that mentioned escalating fines until compliance or surrender. A murmur spread through the gallery. The HOA president shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding everyone's gaze. Morgan Freeman was invited to respond. He stood slowly, eyes calm but focused. Your Honor, he said, I never refused compliance. I refused intimidation. He explained how the HOA's tone changed the moment he questioned a fine. Notices became harsher. Deadlines shortened. Fees increased without explanation. What had started as rule enforcement had turned into something else entirely, a pressure campaign. Then came the financial records. The judge pointed to a line item labeled Legal Recovery Fund, funded almost entirely by homeowner fines. Am I correct, he asked, that enforcement penalties directly support this association's litigation budget? The HOA treasurer stammered before answering. In part, yes. The judge's response was immediate. So the more violations you issue, the more legal power you gain. That single sentence landed like a verdict in itself. The HOA attorney tried one last defense, arguing that the rules were applied evenly. The judge raised a document. Then explained why 87% of enforcement actions over 3 years targeted 5 homeowners, none of whom were on the board. He paused, then added, and explained why Mr. Freeman accounts for nearly a third of those actions. There was no answer. Just silence. Morgan Freeman spoke one final time in that session, his voice steady, unmistakable. This isn't about me, he said. It's about what happens when people with unchecked authority stop listening. The judge nodded slowly, then leaned forward. I agree. He announced that the court would move beyond this single case and examine whether the HOA had violated state homeowner protection laws. As the gavel came down, the judge delivered a warning that sent a visible shiver through the HOA table. This court does not tolerate associations that fund themselves through intimidation. The judge's order for a forensic audit hit the HOA like a thunderclap. What had begun as a simple enforcement lawsuit had now transformed into a full-scale investigation of the association itself. The courtroom, once quiet and procedural, buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread through the neighborhood, and for the first time, homeowners filled the gallery, not to watch Morgan Freeman, but to see whether the HOA that had ruled them for years would finally be held accountable. The court-appointed auditor presented preliminary findings within days. Patterns emerged almost immediately. Fines weren't just enforcement tools, they were revenue streams. Certain homeowners were flagged internally as high resistance, a label that triggered faster violations and steeper penalties. Morgan Freeman's name appeared repeatedly, highlighted in internal spreadsheets. The auditor explained that these homeowners were targeted because they were more likely to pay quickly to avoid escalation. The judge's expression hardened with every page. Then something unexpected happened. Other homeowners began stepping forward. One by one, they submitted affidavits describing nearly identical experiences. Selective enforcement, ignored appeals, sudden fines after questioning the board. Some described being threatened with liens. Others said they were warned not to cause trouble. The courtroom listened as a pattern became undeniable. Morgan Freeman wasn't the exception. He was just the one who fought back. The HOA president attempted to regain control, claiming the board had acted in good faith. The judge wasn't buying it. Good faith does not survive spreadsheets like these, he said, tapping the auditor's report. He pointed out irregular reimbursements, legal fees paid without homeowner approval, and enforcement actions timed suspiciously close to budget shortfalls. The HOA's finances, once portrayed as orderly, now looked opportunistic. Morgan Freeman was asked whether he wished to add anything. He stood, but this time his words were not about himself. "Your Honor," he said, "I'm here because I could afford to be. Many of my neighbors couldn't." The line landed heavy. The judge nodded slowly, clearly weighing more than just fines and violations. This case had grown into something far bigger than one homeowner. The judge issued immediate orders. All pending fines were frozen. Existing liens were placed under review. The HOA was barred from issuing new enforcement actions without court approval. And then came the sentence that broke what little confidence the board had left. This court is considering sanctions against the association and its leadership. The HOA attorney whispered frantically to his clients. The president stared down at the table, hands clenched. As the hearing adjourned, homeowners quietly thanked Morgan Freeman as he exited. He acknowledged them with a nod, nothing more. He didn't look triumphant. He looked resolved. Because everyone in that room knew the final chapter was coming, and it wouldn't end quietly. The courtroom was packed the day the judge delivered his ruling. Homeowners filled every bench, some standing along the walls, all waiting for the decision that would determine whether the HOA would survive its own actions. The board members arrived early, silent and visibly strained. Morgan Freeman entered last, calm as ever, taking his seat without ceremony. No one spoke. Even the air felt heavy. The judge began without preamble. He outlined the findings of the forensic audit in plain, unmistakable terms. The HOA had engaged in selective enforcement, misused homeowner funds, and applied fines in a way that violated state homeowner protection laws. He cited internal emails, financial records, and sworn homeowner testimony. This was not negligence, he said firmly. This was a system. The HOA attorney lowered his head, knowing there was no argument left to make. Then came the consequences. All fines issued to Morgan Freeman were permanently vacated and ordered refunded with interest. Every enforcement action tied to selective practices was declared invalid. The HOA was ordered to reimburse affected homeowners for improperly collected penalties. A court-appointed administrator would take over operations until a new, transparent board could be elected. The judge paused before delivering the line that drew quiet gasps from the room. Individual board members could be held personally liable for damages. Morgan Freeman was invited to speak one last time. He stood, not as a celebrity, but as a neighbor. "Your Honor," he said, "rules matter. But fairness matters more." He thanked the court and acknowledged the homeowners who had found the courage to come forward. His voice never rose, never dramatized, but it carried weight. The judge nodded once, visibly satisfied. The final blow landed moments later. The judge ordered the HOA to undergo mandatory training, annual audits, and external oversight for 5 years. Any future enforcement would require documented proof of equal application. Authority, the judge concluded, exists to serve communities, not control them. With one strike of the gavel, the HOA's unchecked power ended. Outside the courthouse, homeowners gathered quietly. There were no cheers, no celebration, just relief. Morgan Freeman stepped into the sunlight, paused, and turned back to the crowd. "This wasn't about winning," he said simply. "It was about standing up." Then he walked away, leaving behind a community changed forever.